pitch Apocalypse 45.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Oh, it's good. It's great. It looks pretty harrowing, actually.
Yes, I'm really excited for this one, especially because it was done by the same guy that did The Cold Blue, which was an awesome film.
Yes. And the Eric, what's his name? Eric
Nelson.
Eric Nelson, who worked with Werner Herzog.
Yes.
The documentarian. Yeah.
We are live on Facebook and
we're
YouTube
live on Facebook. So we like to have stupid banter. Does anybody have stupid banter tonight before we go live on Zoom?
I was hoping that nobody can hear my baby screaming in the other room.
Oh gosh, no, I can't hear. No, can't hear.
This is a good mic, but I don't know if it's that good.
Oh, poor Avi. What's the matter? You're a bad dad, Sean.
I've been a bad dad.
Okay, here's my stupid banter before we go live. And that is, last week we had a Coast Guard veteran do a rant about how kids don't know cursive anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm fine with no cursive for two reasons. Number one, I'm a historian. So a lot of my life has been reading really, really difficult cursive from like the 18th century, 19th century in archives. It would be so much easier if everybody just printed. That's number one. Number two, and this is far more important to me, I never learned how to write cursive. I'm 54 years old. I went to school. We were taught cursive. I could never learn it. I was pulled out of class. I was sent to the basement to learn cursive. I was sent to the basement for other reasons, but one reason was to learn cursive. I still could not do it. I have never learned to do it. I've never learned to write in lowercase letters. I write in big block letters.
And you have your PhD. I'm just clarifying that for the group. So.
And do Ellie and Libby, do you both know how to write in cursive?
Yeah, I would say well enough.
Have you attempted to teach your dad how to write in cursive?
Never.
No. I learned how to write a signature. I did learn how to write a signature. So somebody said I had dysgraphia. That's my disability. So I'm fine with no more cursive. And I'll tell Francis Hines that if he wants to have an argument. We can have a debate, a VBC debate.
Yeah, well, it all started because, it's 7 o'clock, so I guess we can roll.
Let's go. Yeah. End of stupid banter. Welcome everybody to another edition of VBC at Home Live on this hot Pittsburgh Monday, August 10th. My name is Todd. I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and this is our program where we share stories and learn things about those who serve in the military. The Veterans Breakfast Club is a nonprofit that's been holding these veteran storytelling programs for the past 12 years. Since 2008, in March, we moved to virtual, and we are streaming this. We're on Zoom and we're streaming on Facebook Live. And for the first time, is this true, Ellie, on YouTube Live?
Yes, we are on YouTube Live. So if anybody's watching us on YouTube, hi, YouTube.
So YouTube people can comment or ask questions or chat or something like that. Get messages to us if they have a question or want to make a comment. And the same thing on Facebook Live. And of course, here on the Zoom side, anybody could raise their hands. They could put chats in there. So we have a really cool program tonight. I have been trying to line this up for a long time. Last week, you'll know, we did a whole program on Coast Guard, and Dale Gower was here and part of that because it was the 230th anniversary of the founding of the Coast Guard by Alexander Hamilton in 1790. And I decided after that whole program that the Coast Guard was my new favorite branch of service. Move aside, Coast Guard, because I think I have a new favorite branch of service, and that is from doing some reading these past few weeks about a uniform branch of service that we have never really talked about at the Veterans Breakfast Club. I'll give you a riddle. It has a general and an admiral, but no ships, no weapons, and no enlisted personnel. And that is the United States Public Health Service. And we have with us an officer in the United States Public Health Service. That is Commander Kara Halden. Hello, Kara. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone.
We're going to be
Thank you.
talking with Karen about her work. Actually, she's Commander Dr. Kara Halden. And we're going to be talking about her work with the Center for Disease Control as part of the Uniform Commission Corps of the United States Public Health Service. And she'll be answering some questions, and we'll be talking to her about the public health service in general and her work in particular. And then we have some other guests and other announcements that we want to make. And we'll, of course, we'll have your involvement and feedback. But first, I want to introduce some of our staff here. We have Ellie DiPastino. She is in thunderstruck Chicago, right? The thunderstorms pass through.
I think they all passed through.
And then we have Libby DiPastino over there. She is with me here in Pittsburgh. Hello, Libby. Thank you for joining us.
Oh,
And once again from New Jersey, we have Lauren Del Ricci. How are you, Lauren?
Good. How are you guys? Good night. Hi, everyone.
Good. And we have Sean Hall. And you're about a mile and a half away with a screaming baby in the room next to you, maybe?
She finally calmed down.
Okay.
Shh.
So we'll try and keep it quiet. All right. So we always like to begin with the national anthem, and we have Marianne Mangini on recording with us. Let's go to Marianne and then move on.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Excellent. As always, Marianne Mangini, thank you very much for leading us. Once again, my name is Todd DiPastino, and I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and you are watching VBC at Home Live. And we do this 2 days a week, and then we have a VBC coffee hour 1 day a week. So our next show will be on Wednesday at 1 p.m., August 12th. Lauren, what do we have lined up for next Wednesday, for this upcoming Wednesday? Hello, Lauren. Hi, Lauren. Uh-oh. Kara, do you hear me?
I do. Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, Lauren.
Yeah, Todd. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, is it my mic? What's the issue?
I think it says my connection is unstable, even though the storms are in Chicago. But yes, Wednesday at 1 p.m. here in this Zoom room, we're going to be with Brandon Smith, who is with the Navy Talent Acquisition Group, and we're going to be talking about all things recruiters. So we're going to have him. He's a new friend to the program. We're really looking forward to it, but also talking about recruiting, the woes, the ups, the downs, and have some fun on Wednesday, 1 p.m. here in this Zoom room. Thanks.
1 p.m. in this Zoom room, and I've got to tell you, yes, Brandon Smith is the new commander. There was just a change of command ceremony of the Navy Talent Acquisition Group, Pittsburgh. In other words, he's a recruiter. And he's come to our events before, and he's talked about his job of recruiting. He's a Naval Academy graduate, and has spoken just wonderfully at our live events. But I was planning on attending his change of command ceremony at Soldiers and Sailors, but it was closed to the public. So, but I did see the speech that he gave when accepting the command. It's a 5-minute video, and I was blown away by it. It's very moving. It's very inspiring, very wise, very insightful. He said more in 5 minutes than I think I could say in a 2-hour lecture about the significance of our veterans and those who served in the armed forces and our military community. It was just beautiful, and I wanted him to come on to talk about some of the things that he said when he accepted command, and also to talk about the difficult job that he has recruiting into the Navy. And I also know that many of you out there have served, or several of you at least, have served as recruiters before. And I know that's a tough job. And I always like, my first question for recruiters is, what's the best lie you told to a recruit? I've never caught a recruiter
and the
yet.
answer is the first word that came out of their mouth, right? That's the best lie.
That's right, exactly. And so I put a link to Brandon's video here in the chat on the Zoom side. Ellie, if you want to transfer that to the Facebook Live side so people could watch it on Facebook, it's absolutely worth giving a watch. It's about 5 minutes long. And Sean, I know it's really important for people on the Facebook Live side and on the YouTube side to like and subscribe. Do you want to let people know what they should be doing to support what were these virtual programs?
Definitely. Thank you, Todd. And yeah, VBC, our mission is to create storytelling events around veterans to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. We would love to have you help us with that by liking and sharing the live feed over on the Facebook side. If you could subscribe to us now that we're on YouTube, I think it's a monumental occasion to subscribe to the VBC. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to help us expand our network, expand to new people, bring in new veterans, bring in new civilians. We would love to share everyone's stories with them, and we hope that you'll help us do that.
Thank you, Sean. And yes, and then one more thing, we have our VBC coffee hour on Fridays at 9, and this Friday will be August 14th. It will be the 75th anniversary of VJ Day, Victory over Japan, a big, big anniversary. I call it the largest spontaneous celebration in American history, VJ Day. It was 75 years ago on Friday that Americans learned, it was in the afternoon that Americans learned that Japan had surrendered, and that awful, catastrophic World War II, which was really 2 wars, one in Europe, one in the Pacific, that it was all over. What a day that must have been. And I want to definitely talk on Wednesday and then on Friday with people who remember that day and what their thoughts and feelings were. But first, we want to talk to our guest today, Kara Halden. Hello, Kara. You are a commander. You are a scientist, a doctor. You work at the Center for Disease Control in the Respiratory Health Division in Morgantown for the Commission Corps of the United States Public Health Service. You graduated from Bethany College, which is nearby Pittsburgh here. You graduated,
Correct.
You got your master's at West Virginia University, and then you got a PhD at Case Western University. And don't worry, I am going to let you talk. But before you do, I want to tell people what your dissertation topic was. Can I do that?
Sure.
Okay. You guys will want to run out and buy a copy of this dissertation. Here's the title.
It's freely downloadable on the internet, so you don't have to buy it.
It's freely downloadable. Yes. Disease vectors of Papua New Guinea, members of the Anopheles punctualis species complex, molecular diversity, species identification, and implications for integrated vector management. So I think that goes without saying that Kara will be elevating our collective IQ tonight by at least 20 points. Thank you, Kara, for joining us.
Thank you, Todd, for having me.
I got to ask you, first of all, what made you want to join the United States Public Health Service?
Several of my family members had served in the armed forces during World War II. I was always interested, but I had a strong interest in science, and I never I didn't know how I could connect the two. And so when I was finished with my, when I was about finished with my PhD, I looked into fellowship programs, and there is a fellowship program with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. It's called the Epidemic Intelligence Service, or EIS. It's a 2-year program, and they really just, push you in the deep end of the pool and hope that you can swim. And they allow you to either come on as a civil servant, a normal federal employee, or if you'd like, you can apply for commissioning in the public health service. And so I thought this is the opportunity that I can have to serve my country, and not only have a fulfilling day job, but also be deployable by the Surgeon General for disasters and public health crises.
How interesting. And I know that you have a PowerPoint here, and I think you're able to share it. Do you want to, are there some pictures and information you want to share with people about what the
There
public health
is.
service does and what your career, what
Let me
you've been
see.
doing? I can
Yes,
imagine you guys have been unbelievably busy these past few months.
we have, and so let me know if you can see my slideshow.
We
Can
do
you
see
see
it.
that?
Yeah,
Okay, so
there we go. Perfect.
this is just a short presentation. It's mainly meant to be a recruitment presentation, but it has a lot of great pictures, and it gives a good history, I think, of the public health service. So I'll just quickly run through it. So our service was established in 1889, and the Commission Corps is part of the Department of Health and Human Services. So it's not Department of Defense, and it's overseen by the Assistant Secretary for Health. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but over here in the photo with the gentleman in the same uniform that I'm wearing, Rear Admiral Brett Joie is standing to the left of Rear Admiral Jerome Adams. Brent Joie is our Assistant Secretary for Health, and Jerome Adams is our Surgeon General. The Surgeon General and the Deputy Surgeon General provide operational command to the Public Health Service Commission Corps. There's a lot of dates on here, but essentially in the Commission Corps traces its roots back to the establishment of the Marine Hospital System in the late 1700s. And the hospitals were consolidated in 1870, and the Commission Corps was officially established in 1889. The scope of the Corps continued to grow beyond its initial mission of providing care to the marine hospitals, and its name was broadened to be the Public Health Service in 1912. Non-physicians, like myself, were included starting in the 1930s and 40s. The Indian Health Service was established in the 1950s, and that's where a large portion of our Commission Corps are stationed, providing direct patient care to Native Americans on reservation and reservation hospitals. And the very first disaster response mission that was staffed by Commission Corps officers was in 1999. So that gives you sort of a brief snapshot. There's a little over 6,000 Corps officers in the Public Health Service, and we are one of the 8 uniformed services. So there are 6 armed services, recently 6. I think the Space Force is the newest. And there are 2 uniformed services that aren't armed. One of them is the Commission Corps, the Public Health Service. So we're small but mighty. Our mission is to protect, promote, and advance the health and safety of the U.S. and internationally. And we provide a lot of different things. It just depends on what your specialty is. So we provide essential health services in the most vulnerable places, like the Indian Health Service and the Bureau of Prisons and Immigrations and Customs Enforcement detention facilities. We serve on the front line of public health emergencies. This photo is from 2014 or 15, where officers went to Liberia and set up basically a field hospital to treat Ebola patients in Liberia. We also lead public health programs and policy development. So in non-COVID times, that's mainly where I fit in. We have a lot of scientists and other professionals working in that area. And we also advance innovation in science in places like CDC and NIH and FDA, where we work on the front lines of things like COVID and cancer, as well as the opioid crisis. So we have officers stationed in more than 800 locations in all 50 states and numerous foreign assignments in various countries and other organizations like the World Health Organization. A majority of our officers are with the Department of Health and Human Services, and that includes CDC, FDA, NIH. We have officers who are stationed at the Department of Defense, mainly providing mental health care to our soldiers. We also have officers with the Department of Homeland Security, at USAID, within the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and within state and local agencies. So there are 11 professional categories. So in order to be in the public health service, you have to have a qualifying degree and fit into one of these categories. So they're mainly all health professionals. We have medical, so that is MDs and DOs, physicians. We have dentists, veterinarians, nurses of all levels of practice, therapists, pharmacists, dietitians, our health service officers as a large category that spans anywhere from physician's assistants to dental technicians, and those folks who have their MPH, that are public health practitioners. We also have engineers, environmental health officers, and scientists. And I'll talk a little bit more about the scientists in a minute because that's where I fit in. So we also have a readiness and deployment aspect of our jobs. The Office of Surgeon General is responsible for coordinating our force readiness and deployment for domestic and international operations. We can go out the door as teams or as individuals. We have responded to humanitarian crises, disaster relief, emergency response, and for global training purposes. We basically have the same entitlements as those in the armed services. So we have have access to TRICARE. It depends, what type of TRICARE, depending on where you live. We have the same retirement benefits. We have access to the post 9/11 GI Bill if you serve for the required length of time. But we also have the ability to transfer from civil servant jobs or other uniformed service positions. So if you're a nurse in the Navy and you'd like to work at an Indian health facility, you can do that. You can do an inter-service transfer from the Navy into the public health service. And then we have opportunities for involvement in the response for disasters and epidemics like we're going through right now. But we have to meet basic requirements for both education and physical fitness. You have to meet height and weight standards upon commissioning, and then every year after that, you have to be medically qualified. So you have to basically go through the same medical evaluation you would go through at MEPS if you were going into one of the other services. And then you have to commit to displaying respect for our country and wearing the uniform. That is sort of in a snapshot what the Corps is about. So just a little bit about what I do. So I fit into the scientist category because I have a PhD. And I'm assigned to CDC, and within CDC, I work for an institute called the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, or NIOSH. There is a NIOSH in Pittsburgh. They do mainly mining and respirator research, and I work for the NIOSH in Morgantown, West Virginia, where we do respiratory health research. So I lead a team that administers the Coal Workers Health Surveillance Program. It's a federally mandated program by an act of Congress. It's 50 years old this year, and we provide screening to actively working coal miners. So a chest x-ray and a breathing test every 4 to 5 years so they can monitor their health for black lung. And unfortunately, black lung is on the rise. So I also lead projects to improve respiratory disease screening mechanisms. So the photo that you see in the middle here is myself at a UN agency called the International Labor Office or Labor Organization. That's a colleague of mine from Japan. We had an expert meeting of experts from around the world to kind of come and decide how to best move the science forward and the standards forward for chest x-rays for screening for things like black lung and silicosis. And then I also provide technical assistance to stakeholders within the US and internationally in the field of occupational respiratory disease. This bottom photo is of my colleagues walking as we were walking down into an emerald mine in Zambia. The Zambian government asked for our assistance, and the World Bank was providing funding for them to improve screening for occupational lung diseases. So we went there and tried to help guide them. So that prior slide was my day job. And then on occasion, when there are emergencies, I am deployed at a moment's notice. In Kenya, I was deployed to Kenya in 2012, so that this bottom photo here, for polio eradication efforts. This is me in the center here with the Maasai tribe that we were interviewing about their polio vaccination status. I've also deployed to Liberia and Sierra Leone. This is me here in the bottom left with my Sierra Leonean team from Sierra Leone and World Health Organization, where we were doing contact tracing for Ebola to try to get Ebola under control in West Africa. I was deployed to Hurricane Irma. This is my team boarding a C-17 at Dulles Airport that was shuttling us essentially right through the eye of the storm into Orlando, Florida, where we then boarded a bus and went to Miami and ran a field medical station there for several weeks for people who were displaced from the hurricane. And then this top right photo is of me in Ponce, Puerto Rico after Hurricane Irma. And we were interviewing local residents about their medication needs and various other healthcare needs that they weren't receiving because of disruptions because of Maria. And then for COVID-19, I've been deployed for 150 days in a variety of different scenarios in different places in the U.S., and that doesn't seem like it's going to stop anytime soon. And so I'll end with this. This is kind of the snapshot of the Corps' COVID-19 response. So I think this slide was made last month. There's been over 4,500 officer deployments and over 200,000 deployment days. We've deployed to places like the Diamond Princess cruise ship early in March, to quarantine stations, to help with case management and other human services, to do contact tracing. So you name it, as part of this response, I'm sure there's been a Corps officer there to do it. So that is all I have, and this is my email address. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and I will give you back the stage. Do I have to stop sharing here? I think.
Yeah, stop sharing. And Kara, I have to say, you're an epidemiologist specializing in respiratory disease. Why didn't you pursue something that had more real world application?
Yeah, I don't know. I really should have rethought my career goals.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I saw, when I was looking around to find somebody from the Public Health Service to kind of come on and talk about what you do, I saw that you were in Morgantown, pretty close here to Pittsburgh. And I saw that you were, an epidemiologist specializing in respiratory disease. I thought there's no way that you'll have the time and energy to come on our program because you have just been swamped, for the past 150 days, 200 days, right?
Yeah, it's been quite the whirlwind. And on top of that, I think, my team has all been forced to work from home. So that's my normal work team. And so we've really been challenged in this time because we normally don't work from home that much. And so this is really, I think if you would have asked me in April, I would have probably not been able to answer my email quick enough because it was just really overwhelming. But I think that we found our second wind and been able to sort of pace ourselves a bit, or I don't know,
Right.
somehow drink more coffee maybe.
Did you get kind of diverted from work that you had been doing in order to address COVID-19?
Yeah, so normally, in that slideshow, I showed a picture of a big mobile unit to kind of look like a U-Haul with NIOSH plaster on the side. So that's our mobile surveillance unit. And normally we are out for April, May, June, and into the summer, screening minors around the country. We have a chest X-ray machine in that truck and breathing test machines. We screened 2,000-3,000 minors in a season, and that was canceled. So that was completely canceled because no travel could occur. We didn't want to be a vector of disease in the community, bringing disease in the community. Potentially, coal miners are at the very highest risk for severe complications from COVID because many of them may have black lung. And so we definitely didn't want to put any of them at risk. And so that was completely put on hold. I have a fair number of research projects that have been really difficult to do from home. And I haven't been home. And so basically because the Public Health Service is deployable, our main task now in our entire Corps has been activated. Normally, prior to COVID, we would be on call every 5 months for 2 months. So you would be on call during a month, and then you would be back up during another month. And if there was a hurricane during that month, you're pretty much guaranteed that you'd be going out the door. And so that's sort of predictable, and you can plan around that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always happen. So maybe once every 2 years. But this, the Surgeon General said that every officer is now on call, and you saw there almost every officer has been deployed at least once. There are some folks who I work with who have been deployed 5, 6, 7 times, for a week to a month at a time.
And you probably you said this in your presentation, but yeah, the Commissioned Corps is made up of 6,000 officers, no enlisted.
Mhm.
Think about that for a moment. Imagine a branch of service where there are no enlisted men or women. Can I make a joke?
Sure.
Who do you have to boss around?
Each other, I guess.
Each other. Okay, that's good. That's fair. That's fair. So I think the public health service has just been stressed probably beyond anything that it's ever had to deal with in its history. And one of the results of that is you've been kind of thrust into awareness. I think public awareness in a way that Americans haven't really had for a long, long time. I mean, we've seen you mentioned him. You've seen this face on the news just about every night, Admiral Brett Giroir, and he is the Assistant Secretary of Health. And I guess he is the director. Is he the director of the United States Public Health Service? And then the Surgeon General is the head of the Commissioned Corps?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's how, and I don't quote me on that because I'm not an expert, but yeah, I think that's how it's organized. Sometimes the Assistant Secretary for Health, they are appointed positions, and most times they don't take the uniform, but he was very interested in taking a commission and taking the uniform. So you may have seen, ashes in the past that aren't in the uniform.
Yes, right. And from what I've read, it was C. Everett Koop in 1987, the Surgeon General, who really pressed the issue that he felt that everybody in the Commissioned Corps should be wearing a uniform when they're on duty.
Correct,
And
yeah.
I know that he got some pushback for that, but I think it's become kind of customary, at least for the past 15 or 20 years, that when you're on active duty. So when you're on duty, you're in one of your uniforms, eh?
Yeah. So the blue uniform, mine are a bit faded, and I haven't gotten new ones yet because they're on back order. So I didn't want to wear those today. I thought it might not look that great. So I wore my service dress blues, which is what their Surgeon General Adams is wearing. But right now, since we're in an active stage, essentially when we are deployed, we would be wearing the blue operational dress uniform.
Right. And
We call those coveralls in the Navy, ma'am. I just want to know, do you guys ever refer to them? And why did you choose a hybrid of Navy and Coast Guard uniform?
So
Did you
yeah,
not
so
like
that
the Marines?
we have the Coast Guard, or we have the Navy coveralls, and they're like the jumpsuit sort of, and those were mainly only people who worked at the Bureau of Prisons would wear those. And we used to have our kind of operational uniform was a woodland camo. And when they did away with that, I think there was some decisions made about wearing camouflage. And when we're in the public, kind of responding to public health emergencies, they wanted to be separated from the armed services. So what we wear is a hybrid of the Coast Guards, because the Coast Guards is a little different, and it has different color name tapes, and the Coast Guard emblem is embossed onto the pockets. So we don't wear that. So it's really confusing. We're a small service, so it's difficult to find something that we can make our own, because you can't find a company that will make them the clothing for you. So we sort of have to pick and choose what we like.
Oh,
That must be frustrating for you too, being on back order. I can only imagine your frustration with that. So good luck.
It's a little hard.
And I just want to invite people who might have questions for Commander Halden, Dr. Commander Halden. Oh, here we go. Roland Glenn. Kara, this is Roland Glenn. He is a 96-year-old Army veteran of the Battle of Okinawa, and he was an infantry officer. And we're going to get his mic on. Hi, Roland. Good to see you tonight.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Kara, I have a question. That slide presentation that you gave us is an excellent overview of what the Commissioned Corps is all about. And on behalf of young people who may be entering higher education with a medical objective of becoming doctors, is there any material that you have that you could give us or that give me that I could pass along to someone who is a promising candidate for the type of service that you are involved in?
Oh, certainly. Thank you, sir, for that question. So that presentation or parts of that presentation were designed for exactly that. And they've recently redone our website. So if you go to USPHS.gov, that website is has all of the information on the public health service and how to join. I will say one thing I didn't mention: if folks know of physicians or nurses or other clinical related specialties, those folks actually receive a special pay just as they would in the other services. So that is an enticement to recruit highly specialized, highly qualified medical professionals. So they would receive a medical special pay on top of our basic housing allowance and basic allowance for subsistence.
Is there any tuition support given to promising candidates for their advanced medical degree? This young man that I'm thinking about has already been contacted by the Army, the Navy, and the Marines, offering him large sums of money if he will commit to joining their service. What does the Commissioned Corps have to offer?
So that's a good question. I don't know specifically. I do know that the Public Health Service oftentimes has slots for medical officers at the Uniformed Service University, so USPHS. And I believe they would commission at a certain rank, I think an O1, while they were in medical school. And receive the basic pay and housing for that. But I'm not sure about tuition, if that would be covered if you go to another university for their medical degree. But we are part of the I think the loan forgiveness program, where it's the federal and I'm blanking on because I didn't participate in it, but I think that it's if you serve for 10 years, they forgive the remaining of your loans. And so I'd have to look up the information and pass that along to you. But we are eligible for that. As far as like sign-on bonuses, I'm not sure. You'd have to direct him to that website to see because I'm not familiar with that.
Well, he's not at that point yet, but he's at the point where he's very receptive to hearing about programs. He was fascinated with what we had to pass along on Coast Guard service.
Right,
He
right.
wasn't even thinking about the Coast Guard,
Right. And we actually have a fair number of officers who are stationed with the Coast Guard. For instance, I don't know that the Coast Guard has their own dentists. And so the dentists within the Coast Guard are actually public health service officers, or they didn't at the time that I went to officer basic school. So yeah, so there's the option there to both serve in both services.
We have an Army dentist with us, a former Army dentist with us, Ken Rizicki. Ken, you should have been in the United States Public Health Service. And Francis, you have a question.
On 2 occasions, I had operations with the Public Health Service doctors. There was a Public Health Service hospital on St. George, Staten Island. I had an ingrown toenail. Since we don't have our own doctors, we put it up, they look at it, they operated on me. They fixed up my toe. At that time, my parents were having their 25th wedding anniversary. They lived in the Bronx. I wanted to go. The officer that operated didn't want me to go. I told them I am leaving whether you give me permission or not, and I'll come back, as soon as it's over. So I went up, and while I was on the ship, out at sea, we used to show a movie. And I was sitting on the mess deck, and I had my hands behind me. And on all the tables, there's a bench that sat 4 guys, and they would hook it on a hook, but this one wasn't hooked on the hook. The ship rolled, the bench fell over, and it fell on my pinky or my middle finger on the left hand, smashed the up like a tube of toothpaste, just smashed it all up. Had a public health service doctor aboard. With that being so tender, they took me off watch. I had to walk around with my finger up in the air because when you put your hand down.
Which finger was it? Was your pinky finger?
No, it was the middle finger.
The middle.
It stuck out just beyond the rest of the hand, and that's all it hit, is the tip of the finger. And the whole patrol, I had no watch, nothing to do, but I had to walk around with my hand up in the air because of the pressure, it would throb constantly, and I couldn't do that. So that's
I love you, Francis.
That's my two public health service.
Well, it sounds like you had a positive experience. You still have your finger, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that's good to know.
Very pleased. Yeah.
So great. And that website, Roland, the USPHS.gov is a wonderful website, very easy to navigate. There's a lot of information there. And I know that we went on it today. We had a little staff meeting before this program. Sean applied. He was so enamored with the public health service, he decided to apply for the commission corps, and he was rejected.
I guess an acting degree doesn't get you very far in the commission corps.
Yeah.
Poor Sean.
I can do a song and a dance really well for you.
Hey, Clem,
Todd, I got waitlisted.
you got waitlisted.
They said, we're not sure if your master's degree of corporate and public communications qualifies, but I'm under 44 and I'm a citizen. So I'm almost there.
Okay. All right. Yeah, they don't want me. I'm too old. Clem, how are you?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody. Kara, very interesting program you have here. I'm curious, if you went into an area like where there's a hurricane and that things are pretty hectic, how do you go about setting up and getting communications, coordinating with the local officials, authorities, things of that nature, hospitals, whatever else has to be done?
Sure, that's a good question. Thank you. So when we go in anywhere, we have to be invited by the local or the state government. So they usually have identified a place that they want us to be, and it's usually a school gymnasium or a large shelter. Sometimes we come in and we will operate something that has the local community has stood up already, and we'll just come in and provide basically backfill support so those people can go back to work wherever they were working. But we come in with a lot of our own equipment. We have caches of equipment that is dispersed to us from the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness, and they basically bring it in on a semi truck as soon as a place is established, and we start offloading it and setting everything up. And that's anywhere from cots and medical supplies to communication to supplies to generators. So it's sort of like a hospital in a box, or a lot of boxes.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Todd, I noticed that Gary has his hand up in the chat.
Oh, Jerry Gagins.
Sorry.
Hi, Jerry. How are you?
Mike, just want to make a comment that I'm grateful for the public health service because when I first retired, I was a civilian in the city of Boston, and my health care was provided for by Brighton Marine Hospital at back in the 82, just before they closed. And just as an aside, that was the setting for St. Elsewhere, Dr. Kildare show. Thanks.
Hold it.
you.
Dr. Kildare and St. Elsewhere were two different shows, weren't they?
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
St. Elsewhere.
St. Elsewhere was the setting, was from Brighton Marine Hospital.
And it was that Marine Hospital system that was the birthplace of the United States Public Health Service.
Yes. Yeah. This is.
Thank you, Jerry. That is so interesting. Chad, did you say in the chat that you worked with people from the from the health service.
Here I am.
Who's talking?
I'm talking to you, Chad Riddle.
Okay. Yeah. I attend ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practice, 3 times a year in Atlanta. And I've met a ton of the public health service people. We even had a whooping cough outbreak, which was north of Pittsburgh, 74 kids in a school district. And there were a couple people come up from the CDC to help us get our arms around it. It was very interesting working with them. I have nothing but good words to say about the public health service people, especially there's one pharmacist that I've gotten to know in Atlanta. He's trying to kill my liver. He's from Tennessee. He can
Knock him
put
back?
him away. Let's put it that way.
Well, Chad, I have to say, I traveled with you in Vietnam for 2 weeks, and you could put them away too. So
Not like this guy. No, they're good people. They really are.
this is wonderful. Carol Popchalk, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are all of you guys?
We're well.
Wonderful.
I've been absent without leave for a couple of weeks because there was just a cluster of little homemaking disasters and family crises. So I had to kind of lay low for a while so I could clear the decks, so to speak. But
Good to see
I
you
was
back.
glad to be able to rejoin the crew tonight. Kara, I am dying to know what you and your colleagues are saying, how you're processing the public reluctance to do something as simple as wear a freaking mask and trust science and data. Now, it won't go any farther. You can level with us. What are you saying behind our backs?
Actually, Carol, this is on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. So
Oh, well, I guess it isn't as private as I would hope.
Well, like you said, it is a very simple thing. It is wearing a mask and just remembering to bring one with you. It doesn't have to be a fancy mask. I have mine here. It's 2-ply cotton with ties. I don't like the ear loops. They give me a headache. But whatever you do, I think, we're recommending that you wear it when you are with others, whether it be outside or in close contact, driving in a car with people that don't live in your home, and you have to cover your nose and your mouth. And that seems to be something that people are sort of rebelling against. I think in the summer it is kind of hot. You can find ones, masks that are a little cooler than others. It doesn't need to be a restrictive N95 mask. By the way, N stands for NIOSH, where I work. It's an interesting thing to witness. I think I never thought in my life that we would be here. I also never thought that we would be recommending that people wear cloth masks, but they do work. And the science is pretty clear that if we were all wearing masks, we would be able to really tank transmission, especially in reducing these super spreader events. So it's just been really wild. I sometimes just can't watch the news.
It has to be awfully frustrating.
Yeah, it's difficult to understand. It's been an interesting process, I guess, because I have to force myself to think about why people are not wanting to do this. I can understand why people may not want to get a vaccine because it's uncomfortable, or why people may not want to get tested because it's uncomfortable and it costs money. But we're talking about something that doesn't cost anything, that you can use, scraps of clothing, a bandana that's laying around your house. So that to me has been really an interesting process, and it demonstrates how when we have public health messaging, it has to be it has to involve social science. It has to involve, the physical science. We have to bring in all of the scientists, and not just the people who work in the lab, or not just the people, the epidemiologists, but everybody, to try to get that messaging correctly. And I think the issue is messaging. In the beginning, we said, don't wear a mask, because we didn't want people to go out and buy all the N95s. And that is when now we're telling people to wear a mask, and it's different. It's a different type of mask. We're not telling people to wear N95s, that you don't have to wear an N95. And I think that really confuses people. And if you don't work in the field, and you don't understand healthcare or not close to that field, then it is like, you're lying to us. And so that's easy to understand that, but it's still now, I mean, it's pretty clear it's August. And we've been saying this since April. So
I'm going to go to Bob Mizwa. I'm sorry.
You put in a plug for YouTube earlier. I have to tell you, anybody who still believes masks don't make a difference, you got to watch Uncle Rob Explains Wearing Masks on YouTube. Has anybody seen this video?
Yes.
It is amazing. It is amazing. And I recommend it to everybody who, maybe has to explain and get the messaging out to someone why you want to wear a mask.
Francis,
it's like an adult science fair project.
Yes.
Francis, I see you have your hand up, but I saw that Bob Mizwa asked a question in the chat, and I want to put him on here because I had the same question, and that is about how does the Public Health Service coordinate with FEMA in disaster relief? Is that it, Bob? Is there anything else you wanted to add to that question?
No, it's just that, I was typically, when you have like a hurricane, it's like all these different organizations charge on down there, but who's in charge and who coordinates everything? I mean, we've all operated sometimes where you got 9 heads and 2 doers, and, the 9 heads are competing with each other, well, no, I'm in charge. Oh, no, I'm in charge, and who coordinates, say, the United States Public Health Service with FEMA, like at a hurricane location? Who's in charge of doing that?
Sure. So the National Disaster Response or National Disaster Management System was set up after Hurricane Katrina, or maybe it was set up before then, but it really got put into place and a lot of people took training on it after Hurricane Katrina. And it sort of explains who's in charge of what. And Health and Human Services and the Public Health Service fit under the Emergency Support Function 8, and that's public health and healthcare. So we coordinate with other agencies that provide public health and healthcare, and part of that is interacting and interfacing with FEMA. So FEMA can come in and sort of identify a site for us that is appropriate for us to set up, and then they communicate that to our leadership within our emergency operations center, the Secretary's operations center. So at the secretary level, they're coordinating with Health and Human Services all the way down onto the ground. So that's sort of a snapshot. It's really complicated. There's a lot of I guess people in the soup, and so it is kind of confusing sometimes, but there is a structure to follow, and all of us, all public health service officers, have to take training on the National Disaster Management System and sort of how that structure is, so that we know when we go in the field, we can't just go do what we want. We have to listen to our command and what our command structure is.
It's like being in the military. You have an SOP,
Yes.
That used to bug me. You'd have people wouldn't know what they're doing. Did you read your SOP? And you get that blank stare. Oh, sugar, I did not read the SOP. It's
Right.
all in there, it's your job. And so then you guys have an SOP, which precludes having the cluster. You know what I mean?
It's still a little bit of a mess anytime emergency response happens, but it's more organized now, I think, than it has been in the last, several decades.
Larry Jones, did you have your hand up? No, you did not. No, you did. I can't tell whether you're saying yes or no. So we'll go to Francis. Francis?
Does the Public Health Service maintain the health of merchant marine seamen?
So all of the marine hospitals were closed between, I think, the 60s and the 90s. I think maybe the last hospital closed in the late 90s or mid 90s. So unfortunately, we don't provide that health care anymore in that capacity.
In other words, the hospital at St. George, Staten Island.
Yeah, it's closed. Yeah. I think
Any idea what the merchant marine people do?
No, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, and the status of the merchant marine has changed, I know, in the past 20 or 30 years or so. Yeah, we should have it. You're a member of a veteran of the Merchant Marine there, Francis. We should have a program devoted to Merchant Marines.
Yeah.
I think we do have it on the calendar somewhere, Lauren, for the Merchant Marine anniversary. Kara, I was very interested in the military aspect of the public health service. And I know you didn't go to basic training or boot camp or anything like that, but you do salute and you do say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am. And you get saluted. And, you know, you, in one of your pictures, you saw the personnel, the U.S. Public Health Service personnel kind of standing in formation. So there is a military aspect of it. Do you get training and all that?
Yes, we do. So I think starting in maybe the mid 2000s, officers would go to, prior to mid 2000s, there would be an officer basic weekend. Essentially, it was like a 3-day training course that folks would go to at some point after they were commissioned. But starting in the mid to late 2000s, they were offering a regular officer basic course. It's a 2-week-long course that you have to go there before your, I guess, on your commissioning day. They offer one course a month usually. It's in Maryland or around DC. Mine was in Gaithersburg, and it's 2 weeks, 7 days straight of kind of learning military etiquette, learning what the public health service does, learning a bit about our history. So that's why mine's rusty, because that was 9 years ago for me. And also, practicing those military customs, and we did learn to march in formation and stand at attention and salute. We practiced by going to Walter Reed and various other military installments around DC so that we would encounter kind of the opportunity to salute. I would say about a quarter of my class was prior service, though. So that was super helpful because they were able to kind of guide us without us kind of falling on our face and embarrassing ourselves.
So when you go, if you go on a Navy base or a Coast Guard installation, you're an enlisted person is going to salute you and you salute back.
Correct. Yeah. So it was sort of told to us, if you can't remember, we follow the kind of the naval rank structure. So sometimes you see something, if you're on an Army base, you don't recognize that insignia and what the rank is, or many of the enlisted ranks, it's hard to remember. But they just said, when in doubt, just salute, and it'll be well received on the other end, I'm sure. No, you're not going to offend anybody by saluting them.
Kara, this is the United States Public Health Service trivia portion of the program. We're going to ask you we're going to quiz you here on what you know about the history and kind of trivia surrounding the Public Health Service. So you said there are a couple founding years. What is the first founding year of the Public Health Service? And don't look at your PowerPoint.
So I think it was 1798 or 89. I get the two confused.
No, 1798. I love it. Yep, 1798. That's excellent. And then the other one is the founding of the Commission Corps.
Yeah. So it's the formalization, I guess, of the Corps, and that was 1889. So that one would
1889. You got it. Okay. All right. You're cheating. I know you are. Here's a great logo of the Public Health Service, and you can see the medical emblem and the anchor that has its marine nautical roots there. This was the first Surgeon General. I love that mustache.
I'm pretty sure that mustache would not be authorized by our grooming standards today.
He served in the Civil War under William Tecumseh Sherman, and then became Surgeon General under President Ulysses S. Grant. Do you know what the Latin motto is of the United States Public Health Service?
Oh, it's actually it changed, I think, recently. It's like in officio salutis or salutis officio.
Yes,
I can't remember.
Got it. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Can you translate it into English?
No.
In
Always
officio
serving or
salutis.
something. I don't know.
I think it's in the service of health.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. I'm glad that you got something wrong.
Yeah. It's new, so I didn't learn that at our officer basic.
Oh, that's new. Okay.
Yeah, they changed it, I think, recently, maybe a year or so ago.
Okay. All right. Then that's an unfair question. And this is the emblem of the Commission Corps, and this is what you have on your hat.
It's called a cover, or a
Oh,
cap.
What's a hat?
Nice.
I don't know what's a hat.
Isn't that great? Okay, you have been indoctrinated. I like it. It's a cover. And then this is a cap collar sleeve device.
hmm
How interesting. How interesting. Are there any other questions here for Kara?
Yeah, if I could jump in real quick.
Yes.
I wrote down a bunch, but how early was the Commission Corps sort of put on alert as we sort of made our way through like November, December, and have all the states invited Commission Corps in to assist with relief?
So, that's a complex question because we are stationed in a lot of different agencies. So, for instance, the first deployments that I did was actually with CDC. So I deployed because I was a commission officer, but CDC took me because I was able to go first. And it's a little bit easier to deploy commission officers. So I guess how early were we put on alert? I think really looking back, and again, like I'm not with the division in Atlanta that would have first heard about this, I think, but I think what you saw in the news was pretty much it. Was January, people started getting a little worried, and then the first deployments probably went out not long after that, especially when there was the first case in Washington. There were several public health service officers that were deployed there, mainly all from CDC. So CDC was deploying them as part of their agency responsibility. And the public health service has probably, I don't know exactly how many states have invited the public health service in specifically, but I know almost nearly all of 50 states have invited CDC in to assist with providing technical assistance and extra boots on the ground. So I can really only speak from my kind of where I sit at CDC as far as that goes. But for instance, public health service officers staffed the Javits Center in New York City, which was a place that people went to receive treatment for COVID in the early, like when New York City was really on fire. They have gone into Baton Rouge and helped staff hospitals there when they were kind of overrun with COVID and completely overwhelmed. With the first nursing homes that and long-term care facilities that had cases in Seattle, we had a group of officers go in there in March and kind of take it over from the folks who were working and give them a break and really try to treat the patients and triage the issues going on there. So I think the officers who haven't deployed but are kind of considered mission critical to their agency are at the Indian Health Service providing care on Native American reservations and within the Bureau of Prisons providing care within the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And those folks are all over the country.
Kara, I'm sorry.
One final one for me. Have you had some successes along the way here that you feel there's a light at the end of the tunnel in a way?
Yeah, I think that, a lot of the places, like I mentioned, the Javits Center, I think that was a big success. Nobody really knew if that was going to work as a treating COVID patients. I think it was initially set up, if I remember, to take patients who did not have COVID, so that COVID patients could go to the hospital. And so I think that was a great success and kind of demonstrated that it can be done and really set up a lot of protocols and procedures that didn't exist prior to that, that we can use as examples when other cities start having these problems. So I think that is a really good success. I think generally people recognizing that public health is important. I think prior to this, a lot of people didn't even really understand what public health was and how the health of others, health of you impacts others. And so I think that in general can be seen as a success. I'm not sure how successful we're being, but I think that just the recognition of things like that, how important it is to wash your hands and maintain distance and really watch yourself if you feel sick and isolate yourself. I think that's been important.
Jimmy, did you have a question, Jimmy Jones? I thought I saw a hand there. No. Okay, I'll go to Francis. How are you, Francis?
Doing well. There's a guy that's just retired as a captain from the Merchant Marine after 40 years sailing around the world. He's very active in the Merchant Marine Veterans Breakfast Club. Scott Nowak is his name. and he was a speaker up at the Academy Ball up in Wexford a short while ago. And he'd love to talk to you about
Got it.
Hurricane Irene.
Got no walk. Got it. I wrote it down. Yep. Excellent suggestion. Thank you. Thank you very much,
I'll give you
Francis.
his phone number later.
Okay. Very good. If you want to put it in the chat, that would be great. This is wonderful. Thank you so much, Kara. Can you stick around a little bit? We have a little bit more that we're going to be talking about here on the program. And I know that you very kindly promised to sing the Public Health Service anthem, and I thank you for that. That's how we're
I'll
going to
sing along with everyone else.
because it does have an anthem, and we are going to play it. So, but first, hey, Sean, could you remind people? Oh, I think Jimmy does have a question. Jimmy, we're going to go to you. I couldn't tell whether you were raising your hand or not.
Okay, I was just wondering, as far as the pay scale, you get paid the same way as the Coast Guard and Navy, 01 up to 06, 07, and also you have pay increments like over 2, over 4, over 6. You have all that the same as the military?
Yes, that's correct. So our pay is the same as the military scale, based on your officer level and then your years in, and your basic housing allowance, or basic allowance for housing is based upon where your duty station is. I think the basic allowance for subsistence is the same as other officers in the armed services, but the only people whose pay differs are those clinical service providers like physicians, dentists, nurses, and it's based upon what their specialty is and where they're practicing, and they get a special pay.
Larry Jones.
Yes, Colonel. My question is, I noticed that you have a lot of ribbons on your uniform. Are there any ribbons that have ever been given to an officer in your organization for any kind of valor or above and beyond the call of duty?
Yeah, we have a few ribbons that can be awarded with valor. And it just depends on what the situation is. I would say that it's very rare. But we have been in disaster response and emergency areas where officers have received that for the activity that they were participating in or their response. But I don't have a specific example that I could point to that I could share, but that has happened, yes.
Great. Kara, can you stand by? We're going to go. Sean, could you remind people again who are joining us on Facebook Live or on YouTube Live how they can help support the programming? So I guess to have us reach more people with this wonderful programming that we're doing.
Oh, I'm so honored by this program today, and thank you, Kara, for being with us here at VBC at Home. For those of you watching us live on Facebook, if you haven't had a chance to like the video and share the video, if you could do that just to help spread the word about VBC and help us get the message out about our mission of creating these communities of listening. We just want to build that. We want to build that community. And thank you so much for doing that. And over on YouTube, this is our first night on YouTube. If you could click subscribe and join us there, it's a really wonderful opportunity to help VBC spread the word. Thank you so much.
Hi, YouTube. And Nicole, we have Nicole Chenoweth here with us. Hi, Nicole. How are you? I'm going to
Hi, Todd. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
You are marketing manager at the Carnegie Science Center. And I know that, you, like all of us, have been kind of open, closed, 25%, really working hard, I guess, to get your kind of programming to the public, even when you can't be in person, face to face. And I know that there's a special veterans history related event you have coming up, a wonderful film called Apocalypse 45.
Yes, we are super excited to offer this through our Rangos at Home programming, which is our virtual screenings. They're essentially movies that you can rent through the Rangos Giant Cinema online at carnegiesciencecenter.org. This Friday, we will be launching Apocalypse 45, which is a new documentary from director Eric Nelson. He was the gentleman that did The Cold Blue. So if you're familiar with that documentary, this one will also pique your interest. It features never before seen stored footage that's been newly restored in 4K resolution And it shows archival footage from the end of World War II, as well as interviews with 24 men who lived through these events. So we're really excited to make this available to the public through our Rangos at Home. It's going to be $12 to rent online. We have a page for it up on our website. I'll share it in the chat with everyone. We don't have the rental link live yet. We're still waiting on that from our film distributor, but should be up in the next couple days. And again, we'll be launching this one on Friday. It'll be available to watch through August 27th. And again, that's Apocalypse 45 from director Eric Nelson.
Apocalypse 45, and it's I know called from hundreds of hours of newly released archival footage that's been remastered and brought up to higher resolution. And I just have to say, I would recommend anybody should watch it, but you should watch the trailer first. It's powerful. I mean, just the trailer, the 2.5-minute trailer is, boy, you've got to be prepared for what you're going to see, because it's kind of an unvarnished look of what those horrific final months of the war were really like. There's a lot of footage from Okinawa, for example, Roland Glenn, who served there, Iwo Jima, and like you said, 24 World War II veterans kind of talking about their experience at the end of the war. Really, really something. Pretty neat. So you'll be back, Nicole, right, to give us the link when you're.
Yeah, I'll be checking in again this week on VBC at Home. So
great,
you guys again soon, give you an update.
Very good, very good. And we also have a new friend of ours here, Nick. Hi, Nick DeVoe. How are you?
Hi,
Good to
Todd.
see you.
I'm good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. And
Good.
could you tell people where you're beaming in from so they could all be jealous?
I don't know how jealous you are with being locked down in COVID, but I'm talking to you guys from St. Lucia, down in the Caribbean.
From St. Lucia in the Caribbean, which is where you live. And it's where you were born. It's where your father was from. And we've corresponded by email over the past year here and there. And you have this really fascinating project that you've had going for the past several years. It's your father's flight log from World War II?
That is correct. Yes.
I'm going to show a picture of it. I'll show a picture of your father first, and then you could, as you talk about this project that you have been doing with him and his flight log.
Cool. So yeah, that's my dad. Just one correction. He was born here in St. Lucia. I was born in Trinidad.
Okay.
A little further south, but I've basically been here since I was about 10. I have family in the U.S. I have 2 sisters in Maryland. So I went to University of Maryland. So, I'm familiar with the area there. But my dad left here in 1943 to join the war effort. And he trained in Canada. And he got his pilot's license, and then they posted him over to England. Fortunately for him, things were wrapping up by then. He then managed to join what was the Fleet Air Arm, which was sort of like the British Naval Air Service. And his next appointment would have been to serve in the Japanese invasion, had that occurred. But thankfully, it did not, which is probably why I'm even here talking to you now. So as a result, he never actually went into combat per se, but he was a fully qualified fighter pilot, and he remained in the force up until 1946. And then he retired. He was discharged, came back to St. Lucia, and started a family. And here I am, the last of 10 kids.
The last of 10 kids.
Yes.
Did he talk to you much about his service?
As with most of these gentlemen, no. It was precious little, and so much so that I just had this fascination with World War II and all the events coming out of it, and the whole geopolitical, everything that it has affected in our world today. So many things, and even things like the technological advancements, the space race that emerged after that, and so on. And so anything World War II just always had a fascination for me. And it was 4 years ago that anything that would come across my news feed, I would look into. And there was a Japanese pilot that the BBC had interviewed, and his name was Kiname Harada, and he was actually a veteran of Midway, among several other campaigns, because he survived that and after the war actually opened a school and was a huge peace advocate. And I don't know why I made the connection, but I just thought, wow, if I could get Mr. Harada to autograph my dad's logbook, how awesome would that be? And so then began the process of, trying to connect with this gentleman in Japan. You would think I would sort of go local first, but no, not me. I had to send it all the way to Japan. And unfortunately, he passed away before he was able to sign it. But there was another gentleman. It was just around the time when President Obama went to the area there in where was it that he was the first sitting U.S. president to go and make a speech. It was just towards the end of his term, and there was some of the atomic bomb survivors were there and presented to him, and there was one gentleman by the name of Shigeaki Mori. And there's an amazing photograph of President Obama, embracing Mr. Mori, and it was such a powerful image. And I managed to make contact with Mr. Mori, and he became the very first logbook signatory. He signed right at the very back. And that was a real watershed moment for me, because it just opened my eyes to the possibility of, well, wow, who else is alive and what other amazing stories could I get? And that was 4 years ago, and we're closing in on about 100 signatures. And I don't know if Nikki Stratton has joined us today, but she was going to, because her grandfather, I happened to be in Maryland. As I mentioned, I had family there in 2017, and her grandfather, I don't want to steal her thunder, but he was in DC with a couple other veterans. This is a gentleman who was aboard the Arizona.
Right.
That was sort of like the ground zero of Pearl Harbor, and oh, there she is. There she is.
Hi.
Yes,
It's good to see you again.
And
Hey,
Nikki,
how are you? Hi, Nikki. And so
thank you for joining us, Nikki. Yes, your grandfather, Donald Stratton, was one of the people who signed the logbook. And so, Nick, you just put this thing in the mail, you send it halfway around the world, and you just trust that you're going to get it back.
Yeah, the first time I did it, I was in a cold sweat, and I don't think I slept for about 48 hours after, because it was like, and I dared not tell any of my siblings, because I just did it. And I thought, yeah. But then, and I've long resigned myself that, look, this thing could get lost at any given point in time. It's photographed, every new signature is photographed and so on. And I have all meticulous records of every journey, of every trip. But somewhere along the way, as I say, I was planning to visit the US, and I came across Mr. Stratton's amazing story. And I reached out to Nikki, and I said, look, I'll be in Washington while they were there, and I'll let her tell the story of why they were there. But she so kindly facilitated me, and I had the absolute honor and pleasure of a few moments with Mr. Stratton, and he so kindly signed the book. And so he is one of the signatories who I am so proud to say sign my dad's book, and I'm so proud always to speak of him and his phenomenal legacy. But I'm going to shut up and let Nikki tell you the real story.
Yes, Nikki, this is your grandfather, Donald Stratton, who passed away earlier this year at age 97. Could you tell us a little bit about his service?
Sure. So my grandfather was born in a very small town called Envale, Nebraska. It probably had about 200 people at the time. This was in 1922. Just, one of those stereotypical farm kids that you hear about. And this was right after the Dust Bowl, so there weren't very many jobs. There wasn't very much going on. So he and his family moved to Red Cloud to work in the fields and to just be a farmer. And he kind of realized he wanted a little bit more out of his life. He wanted to see the world a little bit. And so there was a Navy recruiter in Red Cloud and was like, hey kid, you want to see the world? And of course they had all these amazing battleship posters, and obviously they had featured Pearl Harbor and the Hawaiian kind of motif in there. And I mean, what 19-year-old kid from Nebraska wouldn't want to to go out to Hawaii and all that. And so he enlisted, and he went through boot camp. And the first ship that he was stationed on was the USS Arizona. And so he actually met the ship while it was stationed in Bremerton shipyard out in Washington. And the first time that he saw the USS Arizona, it was actually in dry dock. And so the entire front bow was just pulled out of the water. And so he basically came around a corner and just saw the Arizona for the first time. And so he was, yeah. And we're, you know what, we're so excited that there could be a feature motion length picture from his story. And I'll kind of get to that in a little bit. But we just always imagine kind of that view and kind of that opening that goes into the into the movie. But like I said, I'll get back to that in a little bit. And so he was stationed on the Arizona, and so he was on the USS Arizona on December 7th, 1941. So he was actually headed down into sick bay to give oranges to a friend of his who was in sick bay. His name was Harl Nelson. They burned boxes together. They were stationed kind of in the same area. And so he was actually headed down there, and he had his body halfway kind of in the sick bay door. And we always said that if he had gone all the way in there, he probably wouldn't have survived, because that's when the attack on Pearl Harbor started, and he probably wouldn't have been able to get up to his battle station quickly enough. So his battle station was the sky control platform on the port side. And he was there with about six, it was him and five others, so it was six total that were trying to attack the Japanese with some high bursting anti-aircraft shells that they were launching. Unfortunately, he said he thought he didn't think he had gotten any, because the shells were bursting too quickly. They were bursting too soon before they were getting to the Japanese. So he was there when the big bomb went off. He actually saw it come down, and unfortunately, the door to the port side sky control director was open at the time, and so the guys who were kind of on the outside of that area kind of got burned more than most. And so that was one of my grandfather actually tried to close the entry door and was burned very, very profusely. I think at the end, they kind of, once everything was said and done, he was burned over 65% of his body.
Oh, wow.
And actually closer to 70% kind of once they figured everything out. And so he and the guys, they were kind of trapped there. There was no way off the ship. The ship was sinking. There were still lots of gunfire, lots of fire raging. And so there was a repair ship that was docked right next to it. It's called the USS Vestal. And there was a sailor by the name of Joe George. And he was the one that actually saved my grandfather's life. And we actually didn't know his name until very, 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 very much later. So about 50, 60 years later. But he threw a line to my grandfather, and they climbed hand over hand from the sky control platform onto the USS Vestal. And that actually kind of leads me into how I met Nick. So once we finally figured out his name, and we finally figured out Joe's name probably about 18 years ago. And unfortunately, he had passed away at that point. So we never actually got to meet the man that saved my grandfather's life, which is very disappointing. But at the same time, it's kind of birthed this amazing adventure that we've kind of been on as a family. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is we found out that Joe had never been honored with a medal, with any type of recognition from the Navy, partially because he had a less than stellar record. Joe was a brawler. He liked to fight. He liked to get into fights, and he liked to get in both sanctioned fights and unsanctioned fights. And so he had quite the record, and he actually disobeyed the direct order from his commanding officer to cut the lines that were holding the Vestal to the Arizona while it was burning. And so that was kind of our big hurdle. So we tried for 17 years to get the Navy to actually recognize Joe George for his valor and for saving six men's lives, including my grandfather. At one point, there were 5 USS Arizona survivors left, and 2 of them Joe George saved. So they lived well into their 90s. And so we were actually in Washington, D.C. at the same time that Nick was, campaigning and working with my local senator, which was Senator Cory Gardner out of Colorado. We also talked to Senator Cotton out of Arkansas and Senator Lee out of Utah. We had meetings with all of them, and really we're trying to push for this medal to be awarded. My dad and my grandfather actually even petitioned President Trump. They went to the White House and talked to him and just was like, hey, we really need to get this done. These guys aren't getting any older. You know, what is it going to take for the Navy to actually honor Joe George? So I ended up connecting with Nick on social media, and he actually came and met us at our hotel. And it was really cool to see his story and to see all of the signatures. And we really honor that as a family. We really appreciate his willingness to take my grandfather's story and take it with him, because we're huge proponents of understanding that as soon as you share a story, it becomes part of that person. And that person, even if they pass away, like my grandfather just did, that story will continue to thrive, and it'll continue to go on and on and on and on for future generations. And so these men, especially that were on the Arizona and in World War II, as long as, you know, a piece of their story survives, they actually survive.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we come from.
And so where is the campaign to get Joe George recognition for his valor? Where does it stand now? Still in the process of trying to get that recognition?
Well, thankfully, we ended up, I believe it was in, what year, 2018, I believe, 2017, 2018. We got a phone call from General Kelly, who was at the time Trump's chief of staff, and said, hey, you know, there could be some movement on this. And so we were like, okay, you know, that's great. Week goes by, another week goes by. And so finally we ended up contacting Senator Cory Gardner again. He's like, I'm really going to make a push for this, especially because the 76th anniversary of Pearl Harbor was coming up. And so General Kelly ended up coming through for us with President Trump. He actually, those two kind of came together and pretty much threatened the leadership of the US Navy and said, hey, if you guys don't do this, if you guys don't get this guy the honor that he deserves, he basically said, I'm going to go on national television and say what a disgrace this is. So they definitely didn't want that to happen. And so they ended up finding a transcript of the logbook of Joe George that actually had, I believe it was Commander Fuqua said, hey, this is what he did on that day. And they're like, oh, that's all we needed. We're like, we've had that for 18 years. Yeah, so we ended up having a medal ceremony out on the USS Arizona, which is the first time that's ever happened in the history of the USS Arizona Memorial. On December 7th, we awarded the Bronze Star with Valor to Joe George's daughter. I was lucky enough to give the keynote speech, which was very, very nerve-wracking, but also amazing.
Oh, what a wonderful story. And I know your grandfather wrote his memoir.
Yes, it did. It's called All the Gallant Men.
All the Gallant Men. And I know that you and Nick are both going to be back on next Monday to talk about some of the signatures that you have in that logbook, a little bit more about your grandfather and the process of maybe even getting a movie made from the book. And Nick, certainly, if there are any other World War II veterans from elsewhere in the world, or anybody else who would want to join us, we would love to have them join us. That'd be terrific. So you'll both be able to make it a week from tonight?
Yes, I will.
Yes, yeah, that's the plan so far. So thank you so much.
One more question, Nick. I'm so curious. I love your accent. What is your native language? Is it French Creole?
It's English. A lot of the islands of the Caribbean were British territories. In fact, so yeah, without getting too much into it, but during the war, America actually had 2 air bases here in St. Lucia because the Germans were just decimating shipping at the time. So yes, these are all British dependencies. There are still 2 French islands, Martinique and Guadeloupe, they are basically extensions of France. In fact, a call from Martinique into France is a local call. But all these little islands have gone off and become independent, which in my mind is a little bit nuts because we're so tiny and small.
Right.
And we're out to fend for ourselves, and so here we are. But it's English. But there is a French, because St. Lucia went back and forth between the French and the British, I think 14 times. There is a French dialect that is spoken locally, a Creole.
Okay.
I'm pretty horrible at it. I wouldn't even.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nick, and thank you, Nikki, for both of you coming tonight, and of course you, Kara. And I do want to share. Does anybody have questions for Nick or Nikki? Or comments? All right. Then we are going to have, I'm going to share my screen here, and you're going to see the wonderful lyrics to the Public Health Service March, which is the song for the Public Health Service. And I can't imagine singing this, but it's the mission of our service is known the world around. Would you like to sing this, Kara, for us?
Oh, no, you're doing a fine
Okay.
job.
All right. In research and in treatment, no equal can be found. I think it's the only service song with the word research in it. In the silent war against disease, no truce is ever seen. We serve on the land and the sea for humanity, the Public Health Service team. That is so awesome. Now we're gonna close out. Do we have any other comments here for the good of the order, or any other questions for any of our guests?
Oh, hey, Todd.
Bob.
Yeah, hey, back to the masks. I happened to see something on Facebook one day, 2 or 3 weeks ago. They highlighted some scientific test. They had like a black screen, and they showed the person with a homemade mask, one layer of a cotton t-shirt. And they said, this thing is next to being useless because of the one layer. But as soon as you tripled it, it became very effective. And then naturally they showed the third one, an N95, and it's like, 1 micron or 2 microns of water vapor managed to get 1 inch outside the mask.
Right.
So that was my question. These like 1 layer cloth masks, when I see people with them, I'm saying, why don't they just take the damn thing off, because it's not effective.
Yeah, I think that so they're saying at least 2 layers, and the best is 3 layers of cotton. I think that some of the other material that is cotton is good because the fibers are very irregular, and so when you put 3 layers together, the mesh really it's very disorganized, and it allows a lot of the droplets to be captured in kind of a simple way to explain it. The problem with N95s is they have to fit your face, and you have to go through a fit testing process for that actually to fit properly. And so an N95 might be good, but if it doesn't fit your face, I have certain N95s that I can't pass a fit test on because they don't fit my face. As much as I try to get it formed to my face, it just doesn't fit. So I think that the point is, stick with a multiple layer cloth mask made of like quilting fabric or some kind of heavier cotton.
Well, just at a coincidence, several years ago, I got tired of wearing the single layer dusk mask when I cut the grass, because it would still get in around here. So Harbor Freight had these N95 ones. They had both the plain ones and also with the flapper. And I found the flappers were great for cutting grass because it kept the grass pollen. See, I'm allergic to grass pollen. And, you just take it and push that aluminum thing down. I get a perfect fit out of those masks.
The problem with the flapper or the exhalation valve is it's fine for protecting you against pollen or you against a disease if you were a physician or something. But when you're trying to protect others from you, that flapper basically opens and lets air straight out. And so it's not filtering what you're breathing out.
Yeah, it's amazing because I found I had 2 of the old ones that without the flapper. And so
it's a little more difficult.
I carry now with me when I go to the doctor's office to put that on, so nobody has to worry. I'm not going to contaminate you. But they still tell me, hey, take the mask off. I'm going to look at your tongue. Oh boy.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you. I want to thank Commander Kara Halden again for joining us tonight. You're welcome to join us anytime you can make it. I know you're a busy person. Good to see you again. I'm kind of thinking of this whole program tonight, Kara, as your a rehearsal for the audition for you becoming Surgeon General, and you passed it for sure. I'd vote for you. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to thank Nikki Stratton, and we'll see you next week, Nikki, and see you, Nick DeVoe, next week also. We remember our next program is on Wednesday at 1 p.m. We'll have recruiter Commander Brandon Smith. We'll be talking about recruiting. I think we'll also be talking about VJ Day and memories of VJ Day, which we'll also cover on our hour on Friday at 9 a.m. Because we don't have Irmgard, what we're going to do is we are going to play the we're going to close out here with the Public Health Service March, the service anthem. Here we go. I'm going to share the music, and we'll see you later. Everyone.